Is it on? You may wonder what this is. It's a cartridge case made of brass, and it was come from a 25-pounder gun, and the shell was embedded in this. It rose to about that height. So the whole thing, you can imagine carting one of these for loading was quite a difficult job. Well, I want to talk about a time when I was doing my national service. Because I had been made an under officer at Mons Officer Cadet School, I was posted to a Royal Horse Artillery regiment as opposed to a field regiment. The RHA then were all armed with Centurion tanks and Sexton tanks, Sexton body with a cockpit at the top in which was a 25-pounder gun. So when the gun was fired, the whole tank had to move side by side or to arrange it. And we were, at one time I was sent to, L Battery of the 2nd Regiment of the Royal Horse Artillery.
So you'd really gone to L then?
What?
So you'd gone to L?
L, yes, literally gone to L. L Neary Battery. Neary was a battle in the retreat from Mons. We were with a cavalry division, the battery, and we were retreating fast from Mons after we were trying to get out of it. We stopped in a village called Neary in Flanders, and in the morning there was a bit of a fog, and as the fog rose, it suddenly became obvious to the 6 guns of the battery that there was a huge array of 12 German guns, field guns, on the hillside just opposite to them. They had arrived at the night chasing them. And as soon as the mist cleared, they began shooting at the British Army. And one by one, the guns were knocked out. We lost 5 guns, just shot to pieces by these German gunners. And one gun, the Neary gun, kept firing, and men were killed, and they took in turns to act as the layers and the sighters and carry the ammunition. In the end of the day, the gun was hit on the barrel, but before that, we managed to win that little fight. The battery got up with the rest of the cavalry brigade and rode to safety. I don't know if you know that the gunner regiments in the British Army do not have colours. Infantry regiments have flags, so they could all see what a flag was in a battle and get near the centre of the battle. But our colours are the guns. If you lost a gun in the gunners, that was the equivalent of losing your colours. So if you had to leave a gun, you had to spike it and make sure it was out of action completely before it fell into enemy hands. The capture of a flag was nothing, it wouldn't hurt you, but if an enemy captured your guns, they could turn them on you yourself if you hadn't destroyed them before this happened. So the colours were very important. And so the gun went with us as our colour in the parade ground. Well, L Battery was then stationed at Ranby Camp in...
I'm sorry, Dad, so that story about the Neary Battery,
yeah,
that was in the Second World War?
The First World War.
First World War. Ah, okay.
In the First World War, the
okay.
retreat from Mons was in 1914.
Ah, okay.
So it was quite...
and then it became a famous battery because it was named after that gun.
It was L brackets Neary Battery.
Ah.
I Battery had been known as Bull's Troop. H Battery was Mercer's. So H bracket Mercer's, I Bull's, L Neary Battery. So we were all proud of it. Anyway, Ranby Camp was where I was...
And so the gun still existed. That gun was used in the parade, the Neary gun.
No, it's now in the military museum in London.
Okay.
But we had it with us when we went to Germany. We had it with us in Ranby Camp.
Those were your colours.
On the parade ground, you could see the gun standing there. with its bent muzzle and bullet holes in the gun.
Okay.
Anyway, Ranby Camp is in between Retford and Worksop. It's not far from London. I forget which county it's in, probably Nottingham or something like that. Retford and Worksop, and in between is Ranby Moor. And the army had built a barracks there of spiders, wooden sheds in the shape of a spider, with the ablutions in the middle. And it was absolutely horrible. But you see, having been at Fessie's, those hardships were nothing. it was like a holiday camp. But I mean, with cold showers in the morning at Fessie's and then going into the army was a dawdle. Anyway, there were 30 young subalterns, all national servicemen, and the rest of the regiment, 2 RHA, were regulars. Now, we schoolboys, mostly, the 30 of us, were regarded as quite subordinate to the rest of the regiment, who wore overalls and their tight-fitting trousers, and they had ball buttons on their, with RHA stamped on it. We had to wear the General Service flat button with our dress uniforms, just to show we weren't really RHA, we weren't really horse gunners. But we thought most of our senior officers were dull, uninformed, unintelligent people. And in fact, the name of the battery commander was a curious name. Tosti Finnegan was his name, an old buffer who had fought early in the Second World War. Anyway, in the course of 1949, towards the end of 49, we were ordered as a regiment to go to Germany to join BAOR. Now suddenly, as a brush had come in and swept all the dross away, half the regular officers disappeared and were replaced by younger, cleverer, highly intelligent officers. And so most of the senior chaps, the regulars, said, well, we'll take our leave before we're going off abroad. And the battery lost all its senior officers except me and another second lieutenant. There were 2 second lieutenants and the battery sergeant major and 60 men were just left in this camp. Now, the process of going to Germany meant that all our guns were sent away, the radios were sent away, small arms were sent away, everything was sent away, tanks and everything. So there was no equipment left. We were just 60 gunners in this awful Ranby camp. It is, by the way, one of Her Majesty's prisons today. Very suitable and apt, I think that was. Anyway, so there we were. And the battery commander called me in, I think, and the other second lieutenant, and said, now look, I'm going on leave, if you can take a month's leave or something. I'm going on leave now. I want you to keep the troops happy, occupied. I think he may have mentioned educational talks or something, but I don't remember. All he said was keep them happy. So I said, yes, sir, we'll do our best. And off he went. So then the other chap, awfully nice young man, and I looked at each other and said, well, what are we going to do with 60 gunners? So we decided the thing to do was to form recreational visits around the countryside. We took them down the coal mine, we took them to visit a factory, and we found places they could go. And then we realised there was a brewery at Worksop, the Worksop Brewery. So we thought, well, let's take them to visit a brewery. They like that. So I rang up the brewers and they were delighted. They said, of course they must come. 60 of you, yes, and we'll look after you, yeah. So we fixed a date and I arranged for 3 omnibuses from Retford, I think, to call, perhaps Worksop buses, to take us in 3 groups in succession to Worksop. And that was just going very, very fine. I'd absolutely forgotten that the day that we chose to take them to the brewery was the day the battery commander came back from his leave. And I was sitting in the mess having a wonderful breakfast, eating my bacon and eggs, and a runner came in from, a waiter came in and said, "Sorry sir, the battery commander wants to see you in the office on the parade ground." Okay, I thought I'd just finish. Then he said, "Now," he means now. So I had to leave my breakfast and doubled across to the square and got into the office, and I could see through the window as I got near two absolute terrified men standing to attention, the sergeant major and the other lieutenant, obviously getting the roasting of their lives. And so I went in and said, "Good morning, sir." And he said, "What the devil do you mean, Mr. Donald, disobeying my orders?" And I looked pained, you see, I looked surprised and tried to think, how do I explain this? He said, when I went on leave, I told you to keep the battery busy, and you've chosen to take them out on recreational outings. This is disgraceful. How dare you? It's not a Soviet. You shouldn't obey your commanding officer's orders. So I said, well, I was trying to think of a suitable emollient reply, and then I looked out of the window, and one by one, 3 buses were just lining up on the square outside the battery office. And I said, I don't know, sir, but I think I may be too late to do anything about it, because these buses seem to have arrived. And he turned down and said, "Oh, God." With a very, very bad grace, he gave in. And we trotted off and loaded our troops onto the 3 buses, and off we went. Well, you can imagine going to a brewery. We were divided into 3 parties. I took one of 30, of 20 men. The other second lieutenant took another group, and the sergeant major dealt with the third group. And we went to all places, and every time we stopped, they said, "Would you like a drink?" And I could see the gunners just taking a glass of beer here and a glass of beer there. And by the time we'd finished all this, they were in a very expansive, merry and ebullient mood. So just as we were about to leave, the man in the brewery said, "Would the officers like to have a glass of sherry with us in the office before we go home?" So my friend and I trotted up, had a glass of sherry, and then got down to the bus. Well, it was exceedingly difficult to get them into the bus, but we got them in, and as we started from Vauxhall back to Ranby, they started singing. So I stood up in the front of my bus and I said, "Look, chaps, look, you can sing as much as you like on the open road, and I won't stop you. But for God's sake, when we get near the battery and close to the garden, just be quiet as mice. Otherwise our reputation will be ruined, and I'm going to be in hell of trouble." So they said, "Yes, yes." Good old Mr. Donald came from the back and said, "Yes, let's have another recreational outing." They were really quite wild. And they were good as mice when we went past the guard room. They were all just holding on to themselves. There was a slight difficulty getting them to line up in 3 ranks, because the other buses were having the same trouble. And they were wobbling a bit, but we did dismiss them, and they all went off to have lunch, and I trotted off to the officers' mess. And as I sat down as far away as I could from the top table where the senior officers were, and I could hear the other officers saying, "Good, I hear you'll be taking your battery for recreational visits. Jolly good show. We must do some of that ourselves." And brimming, "Oh yes, what fun they must have had." I just kept my head down. And but I tell you this, when we did go to Germany, my stock was very high with the soldiery. The goodwill was there for a long, long time.
That's great.